Protocol dictated that Kexley should have deactivated their experimental sensory package the moment they landed on Earth. The Vazith High Council had been explicit: observe, document, maintain distance. Yet as they stood in the shadow of a towering Seattle skyscraper, their four-fingered hand hovered over the deactivation panel, trembling with an unfamiliar sensation that their newly enhanced neuroprocessors identified as anticipation. The morning sun caught the building's glass surface, fracturing into 1,000 points of light. On their home world, such inefficient architectural choices would never have passed the Resource Allocation Committee. Yet there was something about the way the light played across the surface that made Kexley's enhanced optical sensors dilate with pleasure. A human brushed past them, unseeing thanks to the cloaking field. The brief contact sent a cascade of data through Kexley's sensors: elevated body temperature, traces of artificial fragrances, increased heart rate consistent with what humans called running late. Their standard-issue research modules had never captured such detail. Coffee. Get your morning coffee here. The sharp cry from a nearby vendor penetrated Kexley's audio filters, followed by an aroma that their chemical analyzers struggled to fully decode. They watched as humans converged on the small cart, exchanging currency for dark liquid in disposable containers. The Vazith had long ago optimized their nutrient intake into tasteless, efficiently absorbed capsules. These humans were taking valuable time from their morning productivity to wait in line for non-essential sustenance. Kexley's predecessors had cited such behavior as evidence of humanity's primitive nature. Their reports were filled with observations of illogical time allocation and inefficient resource distribution. Yet as they watched, Kexley noticed something their species had missed. The humans in line were talking, laughing, forming connections. Two strangers commented on the weather, shared a joke, and parted ways with minutely elevated serotonin levels. A ground transport vehicle, a bus, their database supplied, roared past, its vibrations rattling through Kexley's sensitive exoskeleton. A small group of birds took flight, their wings catching the sunlight. Music drifted from an open window, its mathematically chaotic patterns both disturbing and fascinating to Kexley's enhanced audio processors. They began walking, their cloaking field automatically adjusting to maintain their invisibility. Each step brought new data, new sensations, new contradictions to their training. A child's laughter rang out from a nearby park, the sound causing an unexpected subroutine activation in Kexley's emotional processing unit. They paused, running a diagnostic, but found no malfunction. The sound had simply been pleasant. Their internal chronometer indicated they had spent 43 minutes simply standing and observing. Any other Vazith researcher would have already mapped the most efficient observation route, established data collection parameters, and begun their systematic documentation. Instead, Kexley found themselves drawn to a small gathering outside what appeared to be an art gallery. The humans were clustering around flat surfaces covered in pigments arranged in no discernible pattern. Yet their vital signs indicated elevated states of emotional engagement. One human appeared to be leaking fluid from their optical organs while smiling, a contradictory response that sent Kexley's analysis protocols into a recursive loop. A priority message flashed across their neural interface. Maintain a standard observation protocols. Emotional engagement modules are for emergency analysis only. Kexley acknowledged the message but didn't deactivate the sensory package. They had reviewed the previous reports, read the dismissive conclusions, seen the recommendations to classify humanity as a chaotically inefficient species of limited potential. But standing here, feeling the pulse of the city through their enhanced sensors, they were beginning to suspect that their species had missed something fundamental about humanity. They needed to understand why humans chose complexity over efficiency, emotion over logic, chaos over order. And they were beginning to suspect that the only way to understand was to let themselves feel it all. The rain started as a gentle mist, barely registering on Kexley's environmental sensors. They had spent the afternoon following their increasingly erratic interests, rather than their assigned observation route, drawn by the chaotic vibrancy of Seattle's arts district. The neat rows of their data collection grid remained mostly empty, replaced by fragments of observations. A street musician whose frequencies seemed to alter nearby humans' brain patterns, a small gathering sharing food and stories, the inexplicable human habit of stopping to pet small furry animals. Their enhanced sensory package was processing more data than they had anticipated. Each raindrop now carried a symphony of information: temperature, chemical composition, the subtle variations in size and speed. The overlapping patterns of thousands of droplets created a complexity that their systems struggled to process. Warning indicators flashed across their neural interface. The cloaking field was drawing more power than usual, struggling to maintain coherence as it dealt with the increasing precipitation. Kexley knew they should seek shelter, run a diagnostic, perhaps even temporarily deactivate their enhanced sensors. Instead, they stood transfixed by the sight of humans rushing through the rain, sharing umbrellas, laughing as they dodged puddles. The first serious malfunction manifested as a ripple of visible distortion across their cloaking field. Kexley ducked into a nearby doorway, but their overloaded sensors failed to notice the human woman approaching from inside the building. The door opened. Kexley's cloaking field collapsed in a shower of iridescent sparks. Sarah Chen had seen many strange things in her years running the Starlight Gallery, but nothing had prepared her for the sight of a tall, crystalline figure materializing in her doorway. Rain ran down their translucent exoskeleton, refracting light in impossible patterns. Multiple eyes blinked at her in what seemed like panic. Protocol dictated immediate retreat, emergency teleportation, memory modification if necessary. Instead, Kexley found themselves frozen, their enhanced sensors capturing every detail of Sarah's response. Elevated heart rate, yes, but no fight or flight response. Her neural patterns showed curiosity, wonder, and most surprisingly, concern. "You're shorting out," Sarah said, gesturing to the sparks still crackling across Kexley's form. Without waiting for a response, she held the door open wider. "Come in before someone sees you." The gallery was empty of other humans. Sarah locked the door and flipped the sign to closed before turning back to her unexpected visitor. Kexley's translator was still functioning, but they found themselves unable to form words as they took in their surroundings. The walls were covered in paintings of space, not the sterile, scientifically accurate depictions the Vazith created, but wild interpretations full of impossible colors and dramatic light. One piece in particular caught their attention: a swirling nebula that, despite its scientific inaccuracies, captured something about the nature of cosmic beauty that Vazith art never had. "That's my interpretation of the Horsehead Nebula," Sarah said, following their gaze. "Though I'm guessing you might have seen the real thing up close." Kexley's voice emerged as a crystalline chime. "Your depiction is technically incorrect in 17 different ways. But it is more true than our star charts." Sarah smiled, and Kexley's sensors detected genuine warmth in the expression. "I've been painting what I imagine is out there my whole life. Never really expected to get confirmation like this." She studied them with an artist's eye. "You're beautiful, you know, The way light moves through you, I've tried to capture something like that in my Cosmic Glass series. She pointed to another wall, where abstract sculptures caught and bent the gallery's lighting. One piece in particular bore a striking resemblance to Vazith architecture. Warning messages continued to flash through Kexley's neural interface. Unauthorized contact. Protocol violation. Report to oversight immediately. They silenced the warnings. I am Kexley, they said instead, and I believe I require assistance with my damaged systems. Sarah was already gathering towels from the gallery's supply closet. Well, Kexley, let's start with getting you dry. Then maybe you can tell me what brings a being of living crystal to my doorstep in the middle of a rainstorm. The following week brought experiences that no Vazith protocol could have prepared Kexley for. Sarah's gallery became their unauthorized base of operations, though unauthorized felt like an increasingly meaningless concept as they watched Sarah navigate her world with beautiful disregard for unnecessary rules. Today, they observed her handling 3 distinctly different social interactions, each one challenging their understanding of human behavior. The first was a wealthy collector interested in Sarah's cosmic series. The price is firm, Sarah said, standing before a particularly striking piece that depicted a binary star system. This represents 3 months of work and exploration. I'm not just selling canvas and paint, I'm selling a piece of the universe as I see it. Kexley's market analysis protocols suggested accepting the lower offer would be more efficient. Yet Sarah's conviction resulted in the collector paying full price and, remarkably, commissioning 2 more pieces. The Vazith equivalent would have involved complex algorithms determining optimal price points. Sarah had simply trusted her intuition. The second interaction proved even more puzzling. A friend of Sarah's arrived in obvious emotional distress over a failed relationship. Kexley watched from their newly designated storage room as Sarah abandoned her work to sit with her friend. No solutions were proposed. No efficiency protocols engaged. They simply shared what humans called coffee and talked. Humans invest approximately 62.3% more time in failed pair bonding attempts than successful ones. Kexley commented later, after the friend had left smiling. Sarah laughed. That's probably true, but we learn something from every relationship, even the ones that don't work out. Sometimes the trying is as important as the succeeding. The third interaction challenged everything Kexley thought they knew about human professional dynamics. An influential art critic arrived unannounced, demanding to preview Sarah's newest works. His reputation metrics indicated significant power in the local art scene. Not ready, Sarah said simply. They'll be revealed at the showing next month. You're making a mistake, the critic warned. I could make or break your career with a single review. Sarah smiled, but Kexley's sensors detected steel beneath the expression. You could try, but I create art on my timeline, not yours. The door is that way. After he left, Kexley emerged, crystalline form shimmering with confusion. Your actions were highly inefficient. His social influence could have benefited your career trajectory by approximately 47%. Sarah was already setting up a fresh canvas. Maybe, but art isn't about efficiency. Here, she said suddenly, pulling out a blank canvas and setting it beside her own. Time for your first lesson. Lesson. In painting, in creating something just for the joy of it. Kexley's manipulator appendages weren't designed for holding brushes. The first attempt resulted in a chaotic splash of colours that bore no resemblance to their intended depiction of a Vazith sunset. They moved to dispose of the failed attempt, but Sarah stopped them. What are you doing? It's perfect. It is objectively flawed in every measurable way. Sarah studied the canvas, head tilted. Look at how the colors blend here, she pointed. You couldn't have planned that. Sometimes our mistakes create the most beautiful patterns. On Earth, we have this concept called happy accidents, when something goes wrong but creates something wonderful in the process. Kexley's neural processors struggled with the contradiction. Yet, as they analyzed the painting again, they began to see what Sarah meant. The chaotic color patterns did capture something about the emotional experience of a sunset that their technically perfect astronomical recordings never had. I believe, they said slowly, I am beginning to understand why your species resists optimization. Sarah was already setting up another canvas. Good. Now let's try another one. This time, don't think about making it perfect. Think about how it feels to create it. Kexley lifted the brush again, their enhanced sensors recording everything, the texture of the paint, the resistance of the canvas, the way Sarah hummed while she worked. For the first time since landing on Earth, they weren't analyzing or documenting. They were simply experiencing. The first warning of the solar storm came not from Earth's detection systems, but from Kexley's internal sensors. Their crystalline structure resonated with a frequency that their species had long ago learned to associate with massive solar events. According to their calculations, Earth had less than 6 hours before the initial impact. They found Sarah in the gallery's back room, preparing for her upcoming show. The walls were covered with her latest works, interpretations of cosmic events that now seemed prophetic. A massive canvas dominated the center wall, depicting a sun in violent eruption, its corona reaching out like grasping fingers. Your authorities must be notified, Kexley said, their voice carrying harmonic overtones of distress. This storm will disable approximately 73% of your planet's communication infrastructure. Sarah was already pulling up news feeds on her tablet. The first reports were beginning to trickle in, disrupted satellite signals, unusual aurora activity at unusually low latitudes. She made 3 calls in quick succession, and Kexley observed the remarkable speed at which information began to spread through her network. Within an hour, the gallery had transformed. Artists from neighboring studios brought in laptops and equipment. A local tech worker set up an emergency communications hub using modified ham radio equipment. Someone had printed maps of the city's power grid and pinned them to walls between Sarah's cosmic paintings. Your species' response lacks central coordination, Kexley observed, watching humans flow in and out of the space, each adding to the organized chaos. Yet you appear to be achieving approximately 89% efficiency through emergent cooperation. Sarah was helping a group convert her art installation lights into emergency power banks. Humans are good at this, cutting together when things get bad. We don't need someone to tell us how to help. We just do it. The first major power fluctuation hit at sunset. Kexley's sensors detected cascading failures across the city's electrical grid. According to their models, this should have triggered panic, social breakdown, a collapse of ordered behavior. Instead, they watched as their human companions adapted with startling speed. Battery-powered lights appeared. Someone had rigged a hand-cranked generator to power essential communication equipment. The gallery became a community hub, with people bringing in supplies, sharing information, and organizing response teams. You should be experiencing societal collapse, Kexley said, helping Sarah distribute emergency lights. Our models are clear on this point. Your models probably assume we try to maintain normal operations, Sarah replied, passing batteries to a group heading to check on elderly residents. We don't. We adapt. We improvise. We help each other. Through their enhanced sensors, Kexley observed patterns their species had never considered possible. Humans weren't maintaining their normal social structures. They were creating new ones, optimized for crisis. The gallery's art supplies were repurposed for marking emergency routes and creating signal flags. Sarah's knowledge of light and color was being used to design visible emergency signals. Your species possesses technologies that could prevent this, Kexley said quietly, as they watched another section of the city go dark. Their non-intervention protocols felt heavier than ever. Sarah was using luminescent paint to create emergency markers. Maybe, but we'll get through it our way. We always do. The night deepened, and Kexley's sensors detected the storm's magnetic effects, strengthening. They should have been documenting this, analyzing how a pre-spacefaring civilization handles a major crisis. Instead, they found themselves deeply involved, using their knowledge of crystalline structures to help improve the efficiency of the makeshift solar power collectors. A priority alert flashed across their neural interface. The nearby hospital's backup generators were showing signs of imminent failure. Their protocols were clear: observe, document, do not intervene. But as they watched Sarah and her friends already organizing a response, knowing their purely human efforts would be insufficient, Kexley faced a choice that would change two civilizations forever. Sometimes, they realized, the most logical choice was to abandon logic entirely. 327 lives depended on the hospital's life support systems. Kexley's sensors displayed this number with cruel precision as they watched Sarah and her improvised emergency team prepare to attempt the impossible. The humans had gathered everything they could find: car batteries, solar cells, even exercise bikes modified to generate power. It won't be enough. Kexley's crystalline form vibrated with the calculation. Your current solutions will provide approximately 18.7% of required power. Then we'll figure something else out, Sarah said, her voice steady despite her elevated stress indicators. We always do. Kexley accessed their species' historical records. In every documented case of similar situations on developing worlds, the Vezith had chosen to observe. Their logic was immaculate. Intervention would alter the natural development of civilizations, would deny them the opportunity to solve their own challenges, would create dependency. The hospital's main power flickered again. Kexley's enhanced sensors picked up the subtle changes in hundreds of medical devices, each one compensating, each one draining the failing backup systems faster. What would you do? Sarah asked suddenly, turning to face them. If your rules didn't exist, if you could help, what would you do? The question triggered a cascade of prohibited calculations. Kexley knew exactly how to save the hospital. Their crystalline structure could be temporarily modified to serve as an energy converter, transforming the solar storm's electromagnetic chaos into usable power. But the process would reveal technological principles centuries beyond Earth's current understanding. We have rules, Kexley said, their voice harmonics expressing distress. Protocols developed over millennia of observation. Sarah stepped closer, her hand hovering near their crystalline surface. And what have those protocols taught you about us? About humanity? Have they helped you understand why we paint, why we create, why we try impossible things? Another power fluctuation. 3 backup systems failed simultaneously. Your species defies logical prediction, Kexley admitted. You attempt actions with minimal probability of success. You expend resources on beauty rather than efficiency. You? We hope, Sarah interrupted. That's what you've been trying to understand, isn't it? Hope isn't logical. It's not efficient. But it's how we've survived everything the universe has thrown at us. Through their enhanced sensors, Kexley observed the humans around them. None had left, though their chances of success were objectively minimal. They continued to work, to try, to believe in possibility despite mathematical certainty. A new alert: the hospital's primary backup system was beginning to fail. In the distance, emergency sirens wailed. "Your protocols are based on logic," Sarah said softly. "But sometimes the most logical thing is to realize when logic isn't enough." Kexley's neural interface flooded with warning messages as they began to reconfigure their crystalline structure. Emergency alerts from Vazith observation posts registered their unauthorized action. Their enhanced sensors detected approaching Vazith enforcement units, no doubt coming to prevent their intervention. They didn't stop. "I will require conductive materials," they said, their form beginning to glow with internal energy. "And I will need you to gather everyone who can help. What I am about to do violates every protocol my species has established. It will also likely result in my permanent exile." Sarah was already moving, directing her team, her vital signs showing a mix of relief and renewed determination. Will it save them? Yes. Kexley's structure was now pulsing with contained energy. But more importantly, I am beginning to understand something. My species chose observation over intervention because we believed it was logical. But in doing so, we failed to understand the most important aspect of your species, which is... Kexley's form had become almost blindingly bright, their crystalline structure transforming to capture and convert the storm's energy. That some things are worth breaking rules for. That sometimes the greatest wisdom is knowing when to set logic aside. That hope, illogical as it may be, has power that cold calculation will never understand. Together, they turned toward the hospital, where hundreds of lives hung in the balance. It was time to show the Vazith exactly what humanity had taught them about breaking the rules. The transformed gallery hummed with impossible energy. Kexley's crystalline form had become a living power converter, their structure pulsing with captured electromagnetic waves from the solar storm. Sarah and her team worked frantically, connecting makeshift conduits using materials that should never have been compatible. Copper wire from art installations, conductive paint, even the metallic frames from Sarah's cosmic series. "The power conversion is stable," Kexley announced, their voice resonating with harmonic overtones. "But the conductive pathway is losing approximately 42% efficiency due to material limitations." Sarah studied the setup, her artist's eye seeing patterns that even Kexley's enhanced sensors hadn't considered. "What if we change the configuration? Not just a straight line of power, but something more like the way light bends through a prism." The suggestion violated several laws of power distribution, yet when they tried it, efficiency increased by 23%. Kexley's sensors struggled to explain the improvement. "This should not work," they said, even as their readings confirmed it did. "Sometimes the best solutions aren't the obvious ones," Sarah replied, directing her team to adjust the remaining connections. "Sometimes you have to look at problems like their art, not equations." Dawn was approaching when Kexley detected the Vazith enforcement units materializing in the street outside. Their crystalline forms, similar to Kexley's but more rigidly structured, caught the first rays of morning sun. "They're here to stop us," Kexley said, maintaining their energy conversion despite rising internal pressure. "To preserve the protocols, to prevent contamination of human development." Sarah stood straighter, positioning herself between Kexley and the door. Around her, other humans did the same, forming a protective circle. "They'll have to go through all of us first." The lead enforcer entered the gallery, their form radiating authority. "Observer Kexley, You have violated 17 major protocols. Power down immediately and prepare for extraction. Unable to comply, Kexley responded, even as their structure strained with the effort of maintaining the power flow. Hospital life support systems require approximately 3.4 more hours of supplemental power before standard systems can be restored. Your intervention has compromised centuries of careful observation. You have exposed them to what? Sarah interrupted, stepping forward. To the fact that we're not alone, that there's more out there. Look around you. Look at my paintings. We've known. We've always known. We've been reaching for the stars since we first looked up at them. The Enforcer's crystalline form shifted, indicating confusion. Your species was categorized as chaotically inefficient, incapable of proper logical progression. Yet, they paused, sensors taking in the improvised power system. This configuration defies standard power distribution protocols. It should not function. But it does, Kexley said. Just as their art captures truths our perfect star charts miss. Just as their music contains mathematics we never considered. Just as their hope defies our predictions again and again. Through their enhanced sensors, Kexley watched understanding begin to ripple through the enforcement unit. The humans had created something that worked precisely because they didn't know it shouldn't. They had combined art and science, intuition and logic, creating something that transcended both. The hospital's primary systems are regenerating, Kexley reported. 327 lives, saved by what you would call primitive technology and illogical methods, but saved nonetheless. The lead enforcer was silent for a long moment, their sensors running complex analyses. Finally, he spoke. The council must be informed. This requires reconsideration of our fundamental assumptions. As the sun rose fully, Kexley began powering down their conversion matrix. Their sensors detected the hospital's systems stabilizing, the crisis passing. But something else had stabilized too. A new understanding between species, born in a moment of crisis and cooperation. I will accept whatever punishment the Council deems appropriate, Kexley said. But first, I request permission to complete my observational report. I believe I finally understand what we've been missing about humanity all along. Sarah smiled, reaching out to touch that cooling crystalline surface. And what's that? That true wisdom isn't just knowing the rules, Kexley replied, their form resonating with newfound certainty. It's knowing when to break them. The Vazith High Council chamber stretched upward in perfect crystalline symmetry, its acoustics designed to carry every word with precise clarity. Kexley stood in the center, their forms still showing traces of power conversion stress. Beside them, Sarah Chen seemed impossibly small among the towering crystalline forms, yet she stood with unwavering confidence. Your actions have violated the fundamental principles of non-intervention. The first speaker's voice resonated through the chamber. You exposed primitive technology to advanced power conversion principles. You revealed our existence to multiple humans. You. If I may interrupt, Kexley said, triggering shocked harmonics from the assembled council, I believe you are missing the point, as we have been missing it for centuries. Sarah stepped forward, pulling out her tablet. The council shifted, their crystalline forms expressing disapproval at this breach of protocol. But before they could object, she had connected it to the chamber's holographic systems. Impossible, the second speaker stated. That device should not be compatible with. But it is, Kexley said. Just as their power distribution system should not have worked, just as their art should not capture astronomical truths we missed. Yet they do. They all do. Sarah's artwork filled the chamber. not just our paintings, but recordings of the crisis. Humans working together, finding solutions that defied prediction, creating connections that shouldn't have been possible. You see chaos, Kexley continued. Random actions, inefficient choices, illogical decisions. But watch, really watch. The recordings showed the hospital crisis unfolding. Humans adapting, improvising, combining ideas in ways that no logical progression would have suggested. The Council's collective sensors registered increasing confusion as they observed solutions emerging from apparent disorder. Your assessment of humanity is based on a fundamental error, Kexley said. You judge them by how closely they follow logical progression. But their strength lies in their ability to transcend logic, to find connections we would never consider, because we are too bound by our own certainty. Sarah touched her tablet again, and new images filled the chamber. Cave paintings beside space telescopes. Ancient myths beside quantum physics equations. Art and science, intuition and logic, chaos and order all intertwined. We have been studying them like we would study crystals, Kexley continued, their voice carrying newly discovered harmonics. Expecting growth along predetermined lines, measuring success by adherence to logical patterns. But they are not crystals. They are more like light itself, both wave and particle, defined by observation yet constantly defying definition. The first speaker's form shifted, indicating deep consideration. You suggest our entire approach has been flawed. I suggest, Kexley replied, that we have been so focused on observing that we forgot to understand. We documented their inefficiencies without recognizing that these very inefficiencies drive their innovation. We noted their emotional responses without realizing that these emotions fuel their greatest achievements. Sarah stepped forward again, her voice clear in the perfect acoustics. You've been watching us like scientists watching an experiment. But we're not an experiment. We're explorers, dreamers, creators. We don't just follow paths. We make new ones. And yes, sometimes we fail. Sometimes we take wrong turns. But those wrong turns often lead us to discoveries we never would have made by following the logical path. The council chamber filled with complex harmonic patterns as the members communicated in frequencies beyond human hearing. Kexley's enhanced sensors detected the shifting consensus, the rigid certainty of centuries beginning to crack. Finally, the first speaker addressed Sarah directly. Human Sarah Chen, you stand in a chamber no non-Vazith has ever entered. You have seen technology no developing species should witness. By our protocols, we should erase your memories and isolate your planet for another century. Sarah met their gaze steadily. You could, but then you'd never learn what humanity might teach you about all the possibilities you've never considered. The chamber resonated with a new frequency, one that Kexley had never heard in its halls before. It took them a moment to identify it through their sensors. Wonder. The Starlight Gallery's grand reopening drew a crowd unlike any other in Seattle's history. Humans mingled with crystalline forms, their conversations creating a symphony of languages and harmonics that Kexley's sensors now found beautiful rather than chaotic. The gallery had been expanded, its walls now showcasing both human art and Vazith light sculptures, each piece illuminating truths about the other's perspective. Sarah moved through the crowd, her artist's smocks splattered with both paint and the iridescent liquid crystal medium the Vazith had shared. She paused beside Kexley, who was explaining their latest collaborative piece to a fascinated group of human scientists and Vazith observers. The fundamental principles remained constant, Kexley was saying, their form shifting with enthusiasm. But by incorporating human artistic techniques, We discovered 17 new applications for crystal harmonics that our logical progression had missed entirely. The piece they were discussing hung suspended in the center of the gallery, a crystalline structure that seemed to float and shift, its surfaces painted with Sarah's cosmic interpretations. As light passed through it, the paintings transformed, revealing actual star maps hidden in what had appeared to be abstract patterns. Science hidden in art, art emerging from science, Sarah explained to a young human child who was staring in wonder. Neither one complete without the other. The gallery had become more than an art space. One room housed a joint research project where human intuition and Vazith precision worked together to solve problems neither species could handle alone. Another served as a cultural exchange center, where humans learned about crystal harmonics, while Vazith observers tried their hands at painting. The Council's latest report indicates a 47% increase in innovation rates across both species. Kexley noted as they and Sarah moved to a quiet corner. Their only concern is that the process cannot be quantified or predicted. Sarah laughed, the sound still triggering pleasant resonances in Kexley's crystalline structure. Of course it can't. That's what makes it beautiful. They paused before the piece that had started it all, Sarah's first painting of the Horsehead Nebula, now paired with a Vazith crystal that projected the actual stellar data through it. Together, they created something that was neither pure art nor pure science, but a truth greater than either. The other observers are still struggling to adapt, Kexley admitted. Last week, Observer Renti spent 6 hours trying to develop a formula for human creativity. Any luck? They concluded that the attempt to quantify human artistic expression was, in their words, gloriously futile. They've since taken up watercolor painting. The gallery's new transparent roof revealed the stars above, their light filtering through crystal prisms to create dancing patterns on the walls. Somewhere up there, the Vazith High Council was still debating the implications of their experiment, trying to predict where this unprecedented collaboration might lead. You know, Sarah said, starting work on a new canvas, while Kexley began growing a complementary crystal structure beside it. They're all missing the most important discovery, which is that the best things in the universe happen when you stop trying to predict them, when you allow yourself to be surprised, when you learn to find beauty in the unexpected. Kexley's form shifted in what had become their equivalent of a smile. Their sensors picked up the vital signs of everyone in the gallery, humans and Vazith alike, all slightly elevated with excitement and wonder. No chaos, no rigid order, but a harmony that neither species had imagined possible before. I have a hypothesis, Kexley said, helping Sarah mix a new shade of blue with crystalline pigments. Would you like to hear it? Always. Perhaps this was inevitable. Perhaps somewhere in the cosmic mathematics, there was an equation that proved that art and science, chaos and order, human and Vazith, perhaps they were always destined to find each other, to complete each other. Sarah added a sweeping stroke to her canvas, the crystalline paint-catching Starlight. That sounds suspiciously like poetry for a logical being. I believe, Kexley replied, their form resonating with joy. That might be the greatest compliment you could give me. Above them, the stars continued their eternal dance, bearing witness to a new chapter in the story of two species learning that the most beautiful truths lie not in the places where they differ, but in the spaces where they come together.